Okay, quick preview for Chapter 3. Keep in mind that 3.1 through, I believe, 3.11 are optional, that you can do these if you have time and are sufficiently motivated. Main thing to notice is now we're moving to isometric views. Right, so we're going to have more geometry going on depth. We're going to have to pick other faces and planes. We're transitioning out of that 2D focus, learning on sketching and just creating those simple extrudes to where now they're going to get a little more complicated. So one of the things that I also want to do is we'll explore versions. I have 2013 through 2019, and I think my 2015 had an issue with the install, so we may skip over that one. But the comparison between versions, and I think it's worthwhile to take since the 3.1 on is kind of an optional thing anyway. It would be a good time to just explore what's happened in the last 4 or 5 versions of the software, and you kind of see that gradual transition in graphics and moving a few things around, but how it's largely the same. All right, so when you're reading through the chapter material, they go into feature patterns and into some lofts and sweeps. We will get to those. Keep those in mind as really cool geometry to create, but it's not really, we're not quite there yet. So we want to just get familiar with now navigating in that 3D space. Alright, so 3.1, we're just pretty much in the same that we were for the same mode as the first 2 chapters, where we're just looking at that profile, we're extruding it out some distance. When we come to 3.2, now we're going to have to make some decisions on which way to approach this, make cuts, and this may be something that we want to draw in the top plane and extrude up, or draw one of the steps, but we're going to have 2 or 3 features starting to accumulate as we get into these geometries. And same thing here, we can draw a profile, but then we're going to have to come around to the side and make a cut, and cuts on the side and the top, so 2 or 3 features. Alright, so we'll make these in as many features as we need. And so still nothing crazy complicated. We're just having to identify, if I drew this in the top plane and then cut out, we just have to make those decisions as we go. So same thing is probably the front profile and then a notch and a notch. Alright, so getting into the shapes, and so one cut, another cut, probably the T shape, and then one boss coming towards you and one going through. Tying these up, and I'll have to check with the 2010 version, because some of these look familiar, like they might have been rearranged. So again, if you're using the 2010-2011 book, there might be some minor differences. Go with whatever's in your text if you're using the 2014 and 2016. So 3.7, probably just the base, adding in the tab. It'd be nice to have this on the mid plane of the so like the right plane passes through the center of the part, so that we can extrude both directions. Let's see, this one has just the steps. And the general assumption, I guess the general standard, is that if there's not a depth call out, then the hole is assumed to be through. Right, so basically after we cut the holes, then we can do the little notch shape. Our V and holes through, so this one really is interesting to start to see the geometry in some of the shapes that come out. Still nothing, maybe the tombstone shape, and then we add on the rectangle on the side. And then this one is actually in the chapter 3. There's a multitude of ways to do this if you go back through previous videos. I really do like this one, based on the way that they illustrated to create the part, and then all of the different ways to approach it. So let's see, 212, 211 and 212 or 212 is where we start the assignment. And to keep this at about a dozen models, this will go to 224. Alright, and then dealing with the angles, this one's kind of hard to visualize at first look, and so getting into that visualization mode of just staring at the model for a few, or as you're imagining what your parts need to look like, and letting it evolve and grow through the process. We're really just developing strategies as we go. So as our shapes get a little more complicated, then we're adding more features. We're having to do more visualization, more definition on our parts. So probably this front profile, well, actually if we were looking at it from the back, up, over, down, back, and then the dovetail, and then we're going to make cuts out and to the notches on the side. Also could just make the side profile, extrude it out, make the cuts through and the dovetail through. So there's always going to be a couple of ways to approach this. So even in the video, if I choose a certain method and you want to try it a certain way, feel free to experiment and go down that path. So 316 is the one that's really becomes counterintuitive, that when we draw this shape, maybe the front angle, extrude it back, then this geometry really needs to be drawn on the bottom or on the top plane, so that when it extrudes through, it remains normal to the top. If we come back and we sketch on this face, it's going to come off at that angle. And dimension-wise, we're going to have basic cosine errors that the 1.25 is going to be a little more difficult to get it defined. So we'll take a look at that one when we get to it. Nothing too much jumping out, except that we are given the perpendicular day, so that means it's just going to go straight through, and there'll be a little notch out on the back. Alright, going into 318, look at this one and we can split it right across the face, and then our geometry becomes dealing with the front wedge and the back and placing two holes. So this one's really good for the contour and regions, in that we can generate all of this geometry. Nice rectangle with the corners and the lines, and build out from the front plane, and then build back from the front plane. Let's see, 319, not too much of a challenge here. It's just a matter of going through the geometry. What gets interesting is the selection order of the fillets can produce some slightly different results, but nothing too out of the ordinary there. One thing to keep in mind on 320 is that our dimensions, when we come down, this is not exactly in the middle of this shape. So build out your geometry and do the stack ups, but this one of these legs is slightly longer, and one of these points is slightly higher than the other. The 321. So don't know where they got this 52 millimeter dimension from, but that usually generates the most headache for me. Is the hole is shown through the center, and so we really don't need that dimension, and if we try to put it in, it's going to shift this down a little ways. And so try it both ways, but I would say that is actually an extra dimension that we don't need. And the diameter of 24 is assumed to be normal. We're not going to dimension an ellipse, so really I think instead of the arrow going to the edge, it should have been a point on the surface, and said, this cylindrical shape is a diameter of 24. So one of the challenges of dimensioning in an isometric view. And then 322. So we'll have to go back and look at I think maybe it was 10 to 22 are the assignments. Let's see what is, yeah, because I don't think we get into 23 for the assignment. That one's going to become optional. Alright, so have to make a correction there. Alright, so if we split this one in the middle, we can generate this geometry. Same thing with the contour and regions. I can get most of this geometry in place, and then we'll build out from there. So it's really the challenge for Chapter 3 is that you will start to visualize more in that 3D space, that you're getting comfortable with the sketches, and now we're going to do more with the various features. So let's get started.